Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Tonight on Our News, why the National Security Chief says there will be pushback if proposed legislation is called marital rape. Plus an upcoming mass disconnection exercise at Water and Sewage being met with resistance. We'll tell you why. And later, community policing takes on a whole new storyline. Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, Minister of National Security Wayne Monroe says if the goal of criminalizing marital rape is to get convictions, then the government better call it something other than rape. He says married jurors won't be willing to convict a married person of marital rape. Jared Higgs tells us more.
Monroe originally made the comments while addressing the men's branch of the PLP on Sunday. While speaking to reporters outside a community center walkabout on Monday, he suggested that married jurors would be reluctant to convict other married people for raping their spouses.
If you choose to call it rape and you sit a jury of 9 people and you have persons who themselves are married, and a lawyer like me would suggest that if this happened to you, would you be considered a rapist? To married people on the jury.
The wording of Section 3 of the Bahamas' Sexual Offenses and Domestic Violence Act of 1991 precludes persons under the age of 14 and spouses from being guilty of rape. Monroe was asked whether he thought the wording should be changed to take away that protection.
It shouldn't matter what Wayne Monroe thinks, because I'm not the only person in the country. You need to canvass it broadly. Personally, I don't believe in having intercourse with anybody without their consent. I don't see that it's necessary. Rape is an offense of violence. And so my personal views about it should be engaged when we say, how are we going to change this institution called marriage in the Bahamas?
At the PLP meeting, several crowd members expressed opposition to criminalizing marital rape. At one point, one audience member disagreed, saying he viewed rape as rape, whether married or not. Another woman in the crowd, who identified herself as Carolyn Strawn, suggested that people who don't have high sex drives should reconsider whether they ought to get married.
If you know you're not sexy, you know you're not easily aroused, that's something to say, stay single. Yes. If a man married a woman, and I live this, if you touch me any hour of the night, I'm ready.
Monroe also suggested that government may want to seek the will of the people on the issue. He also noted that the country has committed to criminalizing marital rape on previous occasions. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
In other news, one man is dead after a triple shooting Saturday night. Our Sasha Lightbourne speaks with the police commissioner about the victims and the police concerns over gun violence in the country.
The police commissioner this morning giving an update on that triple shooting that occurred in Millers Heights over the weekend, where one of the victims died in hospital early Sunday morning.
The victim, a male believed to be in his late 20s, died in hospital shortly after 12:30 a.m. Sunday, according to police. One of Saturday's victims is reportedly accused of murder and was out on bail when shots rang out. Commissioner of Police Paul Roll says too often those out on bail end up as victims in retaliation incidents.
But we know for a fact that persons charged with serious offenses, particularly murder, and get bail, we have seen too much within a matter of weeks that they're being shot and killed. And I think somebody said some time ago that getting bail for murder is almost certain death. And I would hope that all of us, those responsible, will take those things. But you know, people are entitled to apply for bail.
Meanwhile, the commissioner was also asked about his thoughts on the efficacy of other branches of the criminal justice system once police hand over their investigations.
Judge me on my responsibility. I'm required to keep the Bahamas safe, to prevent crime, and where crime is not prevented is committed, to investigate, and to bring persons to justice. Ask whether I am doing that and the police are doing that, I say yes. I cannot and will not speak for the Department of Public Prosecutions or the courts. That's not my lane. You could go and speak to the Director of Public Prosecution, find out from him his views, and the Chief Justice. But as far as I'm concerned, the police officers are doing an excellent job in meeting our mandate, and we will continue to do that.
Rowles says he remains concerned about the proliferation of gun violence, particularly here in New Providence, and police will continue to work to reduce the homicide rate.
We are concerned of every shooting incident. On Wednesday, my policing plan is going to be presented in Parliament, and you'll get that. Okay, but I think we have addressed you got those information already, and we're going to continue to do our best to keep this Bahamas safe.
Reporting for our news, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
The Water and Sewage Corporation announced over the weekend mass disconnections will begin on March 28th. However, some customers don't feel now is the appropriate time. Cale Campbell reports.
You need water. That's something you need consistent coming in your house. Sanitation. Imagine you get a house with various children, adults in the house, everyone using the toilets. How are they going to be able to flush and clean?
A public notice by the Water and Sewage Corporation announced mass disconnections will begin on the 28th of March after being suspended in 2020. Discussions on the decision of disconnecting was top priority for the then newly appointed board, according to Minister of Works and Utilities Alfred Sears back in December. Our News caught up with Water and Sewage Corporation customers for their thoughts on the matter, with some feeling there should be more leniency.
With all this COVID pandemic what's happening, I think they're asking you to follow protocols, and sanitizing or washing your hands is I think very important. So the government need to make that into consideration due to the pandemic and what's happening around in the country.
Some folks don't have any job, and I just feel that the government should be some sort of leniency towards them, you know?
Other Water and Sewage Corporation customers, while understanding of the situation, feel delinquent consumers should be cut off first, and those who try to pay their bills shouldn't suffer for those who don't.
I feel the criteria should be the payment history of the individual that they are going to disconnect. If the person has a history of paying on time, and then we should look at that. There should be some concession for those individuals. Now, if the person has a history of not paying at all or always late and like I said, not paying at all, then then we need to look at that.
Sometimes the little money would come in your hand.
Gotta use another thing.
You gotta use another thing. So sometimes you try to see if you can put something here, put something there, put something anywhere else. Now, down the line, someone should say, hey, let's be lenient on those who trying to make effort. Now you have some people who don't make no effort at all.
Most customers we spoke to said the corporation should still consider the pandemic and its unprecedented effect on the Bahamas.
We have to have a level of compassion because we've just finished a very, very difficult time in the history of the Bahamas, and people just a lot of persons don't have the means, so we need to look at ways that we can accommodate persons if they come in, because some people really have good intentions about paying their bills.
For Our News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Winds dying down a bit today. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with the latest. Good evening, Greg.
Good evening, Christina, and good evening, Bahamas. Our first look at weather tonight is being brought to you by Ports International, trusted medical supplies for a better quality of life. Comfortable conditions outside our studios, still a bit breezy, temperatures in the upper 70s, with a few clouds. Your winds are out of the east-southeast at 9 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature very warm and muggy, 78. Satellite view, ridge of high pressure continues to dominate our weather. That's continuing to bring us some low-level clouds on that easterly breeze. Those clouds giving way to a few brief showers across the island chain. We got one or two of those here in the capital early this morning. We will continue to experience those conditions throughout the rest of the night and into tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, the foreign minister suggests the Bahamas may join with allies for sanctions against Russia. And out with the old and in with the new as UB North moves to a new campus. Plus, it's story time at a local elementary school, and it's not the teachers doing the reading. That's coming up when Our News returns.
Got size at 6'5". This is serious.
Amid the ongoing standoff between Russia and other world leaders following its invasion into Ukraine, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell is speaking out, suggesting the Bahamas may have to toe the line and side with its partners on sanctions. Bethany McDermott reports.
Days after the United States urged the Bahamas to close its airspace to Russian aircraft and limit Russian access to the financial system, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell says it's a matter that will take a few days to deliberate, but suggested the Bahamas will have to side with its allies.
People have to line up on whose side you're on, whether you're on there's a good guys, bad guys side. And, our allies, the United States and the West, and so that's where we're lining up. And we have to do, in my view, things which are consonant with those facts. But until there's some formal decision made, I can only say it's an evolving story.
On Friday, United States Embassy Public Affairs Officer Daniel Durazo said they welcome efforts by allies and partners to make Putin pay the price for his unprovoked and unjustified attack on an independent and democratic Ukraine. Mitchell said many banks are acting as if sanctions have been imposed by the government.
Many of the banks and trust companies here are already dealing with individuals who have been sanctioned and institutions that have been sanctioned as if sanctions had been imposed by the Bahamas government. And that is because in their home countries they may run afoul of the law if they do not apply the sanctions that have been applied in their home countries.
But he reiterated that no decision in that regard has been made yet. The Russian ambassador to Cuba claimed trade between the two countries more than doubled last year when compared to the year before, adding that Russia is ready for active cooperation with the Bahamas. The United Nations Trade Statistics Branch reported that Russia exported over $281 million worth of goods to the Bahamas in 2019.
We'll have to check with the customs and excise people, but it's largely probably oil, as the ambassador said, but and it's probably just a booking transaction in any way. Not sure whether the actual oil came through the Bahamas, but a lot of companies use the Bahamas as a booking spot for their transactions, for tax and other reasons.
Reporting for our news, I'm Bethany McDermott.
Meanwhile, a Russian of Bahamian descent is having trouble leaving that country, according to Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell. He says the individual was attempting to leave the country on a Russian passport. Mitchell says officials are checking to see if the individual is in fact Bahamian. Once that's clear, he says a Bahamian passport will be issued.
Someone who is a Bahamian citizen represented to us that their child who never obtained a Bahamian passport was having difficulty leaving Russia on a Russian passport. So the question was whether that child, I'm using child not in the sense of a minor or not because this is an adult child, whether that person had Bahamian citizenship as was claimed. If the person has Bahamian citizenship as claimed, then we'll issue a Bahamian passport and there should be no issue with traveling.
Shifting gears now, the University of the Bahamas Northern Campus has acquired prime property in the heart of downtown Freeport. University officials announcing today they are acquiring the Kipling complex at a price tag of $3.8 million. Jasmine Brown reports.
A sales agreement was signed between the University of the Bahamas and Variance & Co. for the acquisition of the downtown Freeport property during a ceremony that was attended by UB and education officials. Minister of Education Glenys Hannah Martin described the event as a symbol of national progress and a sign of hope for Grand Bahama.
This new space for learning and innovation and research and independent thought and synergistic exchange and academic progress in the heart of Grand Bahama will enrich the ethos of this island population.
The acquisition of the Kipling building comes more than 2 years after UB's northern campus was ravaged by Monster Storm Dorian in September 2019. The East Grand Bahama campus suffered severe flood damage, which washed out the ground floor of both buildings. UB North Campus President Dr. Ian Strawn.
After our long night of great loss, sorrow, suffering, and distress, comes a day worthy of dancing in praise. In the midst of the wreckage of Dorian, I made a promise to our students that I knew that it would take much more than my own power to keep. And that promise was that UB North would return bigger and better than before. Thanks to the efforts of so many people, including the Cooper family and the university's Board of Trustees, under the capable leadership of our chair, Allison Maynard Gibson, that promise will be kept.
Grand Bahama has been suffering economically for years. Once regarded as the Bahamas' second city, Freeport is a shadow of its former bustling self. UB President Dr. Rodney Smith insists the Kipling Complex site will become a hub of transformation and revitalization for that city.
First, the renovation of the complex will immediately begin to transform the immediate area. The daily buzz of activity and student life will soon add to the transformation of the area. But truly, the transformation will be even deeper and more extensive than that. Universities that are woven into cities have widespread impacts on the social and economic fabric of the communities.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
When our news comes back from the break, new ambassadors are commissioned and Bahamian baller DeAndre Ayton shines. The details when our news returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamika.
This is our news. Welcome back. 2 ambassadors and a high commissioner were commissioned for their duties in a brief ceremony this afternoon. High Commissioner to CARICOM and Seabreeze MP Leslie Miller-Bryce, Ambassador to the United States Wendell Jones, and Resident Ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva Patricia Hermans were today commissioned. Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper emphasized the importance of their roles and the weight of their responsibilities. He says the government is committed to ensuring the Bahamas plays its part on the world stage.
Tangible benefits have already begun to emerge. We are developing wider and deeper relationships with potential investors. We are giving greater credibility to our fiscal position, and plans to grow and transform the economy are well underway. We are making our voice heard around the issues connected to climate change, on which so much of our future depends.
Well, DeAndre Ayton with a career high on his son's first birthday. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield and the Pacers see action as well. Marcellus Hall has the details.
All right, thanks, Christina, and welcome to our Sports on a Monday, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. It was a busy but productive weekend for both of our NBA stars, both DeAndre Ayton and Buddy Hield. Starting with DeAndre Ayton, it was his son's first birthday. He celebrated in style, putting up a career high in points. Let's take a look right now. Back to work yesterday for DeAndre Ayton and the Phoenix Suns. They took on the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks in a rematch of last year's championship series. And, well, what can we say? The more things change, the more they stay the same. Suns would have a lead going into the fourth quarter, but back would come Milwaukee. They ride a 44-point performance from Chris Middleton. They take down the Phoenix Suns 132-122. Should be pointed out, Phoenix still without the services of point guard Chris Paul. But what a night for DeAndre Ayton. The Bahamas native going off at 30 points, a career high. Finished up with 8 rebounds and 2 assists, and he did all on his son's birthday. Great job there for DeAndre Ayton. Suns still have the best record in the league. They're 51-13, and their next game comes your way. It's going to be on Tuesday when they take on the Orlando Magic in Orlando. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield and the Indiana Pacers, they were in action yesterday as well, taking on the Washington Wizards. And Indiana, unfortunately, couldn't get anything going against this team. Washington, not one of the better teams in the league, but they're slightly better than Indiana, apparently. They win 133-123. They ended by winning by 10. Buddy continuing his solid play for the Pacers since being traded. He played 39 minutes, finished up with 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. That pace is still 13th place in the Eastern Conference. Not looking particularly good there, but they do play again. Their next game comes your way on Tuesday. That's going to be against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And there it is, your look at sports on a Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Marcellus. When our news returns, a look ahead in weather, plus students get a special storytime treat. Our news continues after this.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamika.
Welcome back to our news. Mostly sunny and nice conditions in the week ahead. Greg is back in the Weather Center.
Thanks, Christina, and welcome back, everybody, for our second look at weather. Ridge of high pressure out in the Atlantic continuing to dominate our weather. That ridge is keeping us in that breezy easterly to east-southeast regime. Those winds will continue to generate some very rough seas and some hazardous beaching conditions out there. So we're asking you boaters to exercise extreme caution. And you beachgoers, we're asking you, if you're not really have to get into the water, stay out of the water. High risk of rip currents will continue to be with us for at least another several days, so it's going to be very rough out there for swimming. That high will slide out towards the east, as by the end of the week we expect our temperatures to start warming up. We could see some temperatures in the mid to upper 80s by the weekend. Boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Winds will be out of the east to southeast at 15 to 25 knots. Advisory still in place for you guys, but we expect that to be dropped to an caution actually by tomorrow afternoon. 5 to 8 foot seas, very rough. High tide will be at 11:29 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through next Monday. Pleasant weather expected for the remainder of the week, but we do see a frontal boundary getting in here by the weekend. That's a look at our weather. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Greg. Dozens of students at the Eva Hilton Primary School were treated to a special visit by top brass of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, who read short stories to third graders during a special assembly. Police Commissioner Paul Roll, Deputy Commissioner Loretta Mackey, and several other assistant commissioners visited the school this morning. School Principal Jermaine Butler.
It is quite the honor to have our friends with us today. I didn't say officers, I said our friends. I'm quite impressed by this morning's event. We are celebrating Police Month under the theme, a celebration of grace and peace. And if you know, this is such a timely topic.
Commissioner Paul Roll says the Special Assembly is a part of the events that mark Police Month. In addition to reading to students, Roll and his team also treated them to lunch. Well, thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.